Welcome back. We've been learning about inheritance, and naturally following inheritance is this topic called polymorphism. Now, you see a little bit of text here that I'll come back to later. It'll make a little more sense after you've actually seen it happen with the code. But polymorphism is the ability of an object to take on many forms. So that's basically the word there. Poly, many, morph, changing. The most common use of this in our programming occurs when a parent class reference is used to refer to a child class object. And then you'll see something here also about a is-a test. So let's actually see this in code, and then we can come back and look at it. Now the project we're going to use is going to be that teacher project with the person, student, exchange student, and teacher. You've seen it before, but here's a little refresher, a little summary of that project just before we get started with our examples. We had a person class, and then building off the person class, I said student extends person. And so what did it do? Well, it basically gets the code for person, and we added a little bit more, right? Student ID, marks. We redid or added some methods here. Then I did exchange student, and exchange student extended off of student. The addition was a change in the average mark method. I added a return date when they're going back home, and the unadjusted average mark method. Now I'm just going to use these three for the most of the example here, but here's the general idea. A student is a person. It extends person. It has all this stuff. So if it has all that stuff and more, you could say a student is a student, and a student is a person. That's part of this is-a test they're talking about down here. By the same token, an exchange student is an exchange student, but an exchange student is also a student. They just have a little bit extra down here, or modifications. An exchange student is a student, and a student is a person. It naturally leads to an exchange student is also a person. So an exchange student is a student, and an exchange student is a person. I may as well hit teacher here. Teacher has nothing to do with student and exchange student, but teacher extends off of person, so a teacher is a teacher, and a teacher is a person as well. Now let's check out what this allows you to do in the code. So I have a new runner here in the project, and I've just sort of fast forwarded and I've typed a bunch of stuff, and you can just see that there's no red lines here. This is acceptable. The compiler likes it. I haven't broken any rules. Normally you guys would do like person P equals a new person. That's totally fine. But look at what else you can do here. Person P. P is a reference in memory to a person. And the nice thing here is that since a student is a person, they qualify for this person reference. If you think about it, P, the person, is going to try to do person stuff, right? It's going to try to do methods in the person class because it is a person reference. Well, student can do everything that a person can do, so that's okay. Same with exchange student. It extended student, that extended person. It's going to be able to do all this stuff as well. So when you actually set this up, you could have a person reference point to a student in memory, an exchange student in memory, or even a teacher in memory. Students, teachers, and exchange students all have the code necessary to behave and act like a person. And so that's part of the polymorphism. Even though this is a reference to a person, it can point in memory to anything that you can say is a person. And a student is a person, a teacher is a person, exchange student is a person. And so it works. Here's just another example or two. I have a reference to a student. So S is supposed to point in memory to a student. So I can make it point to a student, but I could also make it point to an exchange student. And this is just fine because S2, since it's a student reference, is going to try to do student stuff. It's going to try to study or talk or get average mark or use marks or access its student ID. Exchange students can do all this stuff because they extended off of student. And so exchange student is a student. So exchange student is a student, S2 student, perfect. Okay, it all works out. Now you may ask yourself, can you just make anything mix and mash? No. You have to follow the chain. The is a rule here, right? What qualifies as what? For example, here's ones that don't work. And you'll see the compiler will know. Student S3, set yourself equal to a new person. No, red line. Incompatible types. I require a student on this side of the equal sign, and a person is not a student. Imagine if you tried to actually do that line of code, and then you asked your student to study. Well, you just made this in memory. This does not have a study method, or a get average mark method, or a student ID. So you might try to do student stuff, and what you have in memory isn't good enough, so the compiler is not going to allow it. You can't go backwards. Person is not a student. That's a no-go. By the same token, you can probably think of some others here that won't work, but exchange student cannot point to a student. The student class doesn't have enough code to qualify as a reference to an exchange student object. And so it doesn't work. You can probably think of some others here, like teacher T equals new person. Doesn't work. I mean, you could set this to almost anything else. Teachers can only be teachers. There's nothing below them, right? Exchange students can only be set to exchange students. Now, this is the tip of the iceberg on polymorphism, but it's sort of setting up the picture here. That's the basics. When you actually go back and you look at some of your other classes here, any of these where there's extending, you're going to see that you could do this in your runner. Now, of course, the big question, why or when would you want to do this? That's a trickier one. We need to learn a little more, and then we can start to dig into why or when you may see this happen. So it's going to eventually come. For now, we're just trying to learn the basics on this. Good luck. We'll see you in the next video.